Okay, level 3 is factoring with the greatest common factor where the first number is greater than 1, and with the different squares where the first number is not equal to 1 like it was in level 3. So a little combination of level 1 and level 2 is put together here. So again, you've got a couple examples here. So if you multiply this together, you're going to get that outcome. So again, if you factor the outcome, you're going to get that as an answer. So this is what we're saying, where it could have a greatest common factor, or it could have a number out in front where it's bigger than 1. It's not just an x squared term. So here's where checking those middle numbers are really going to come in handy here. So you always want to ask yourself first is there a greatest common factor? And in letter A, we're looking again at the smallest number. You got 2. Well, since 2 does not go into 3 or 5, I know there is no greatest common factor here. So I'm going to set up my 2 factors. The first number, I know these two have got to be multiplied to get to 2x if I multiply these. So my only options are 2x and x. Now these back numbers have got to multiply to get to a negative 5. Well, it could either be a negative times a positive or a positive times a negative. So this is where you just got to guess and check here. So my factors of 5 are basically just 5 and 1. So I'm going to kind of play around with where they go in terms of where we're going to multiply them. So if I put a 1 here and a 5 here, and I put this as subtraction and this as addition, I'm going to go ahead and check the middles, knowing that 1 times negative 5 is negative 5. So I know I got the back half okay. I'm going to check the middles now. 1 times x is 1x. 2 times negative 5 is negative 10x. If I add those together, I'm going to get negative 9x. That's not what I want. I want negative 3x, so I know I'm going to have to change some things. So here's where the iPads are actually pretty nice, because erasing it is a lot simpler than if you were writing it constantly on paper. So be thankful for those. So what happens if I just change the 5 and the 1? So put the 5 here and the 1 here. Checking the middles again. 5 times x is 5x. 3 times negative 1, I'm sorry, 2 times negative 1 is negative 2x. And if I add those together, I'm going to get 3x. But I want a negative. So I'm close. So what happens if I change this positive and this negative and switch them around? Make this one negative and this one positive. So now if I multiply negative 5 times x, I'm going to get negative 5x. And 2 times a positive 1, that's a positive 2. So now I'm going to get negative 3x, which is what my middle term should be if I multiply it back together. So your final answer in factored form would be 2x minus 5 and x plus 1. So again, it's just going to take some guessing and checking here, and just make sure that you check your middle terms. Okay, in B, again, you always ask yourself, is there a greatest common factor? So looking at the smallest number of 12. 12 can't go into 15, and I know 12 can't go into 57, but are there factors of 12 that go into both? The factor of 3 does go into 12, and 3 goes into 15 and 57. So I'm going to take a 3 out of both of these numbers and write the leftovers. So I got 3 blanks here. So 3 times what is going to get me back to 15x squared? It's going to be 5x squared. 3 times what will get you back to 57? That answer will be 19x with an addition sign in between. And 3 times what will get you back to negative 12, and that answer is negative 4. So now what we want to do is decide if we can factor the leftovers. So if we can factor these guys some more. So I'm going to break down 2 factors, and the first 2 spots are going to be numbers that multiply to get to 5x. So my only options are 5x and x. And I'm going to bring down this 3 here so don't forget it in the end. And then the back numbers are going to multiply to get to negative 4. Again, negative times a positive is a negative, or positive times a negative is a negative. The options that we have for 4 are 1, 2, and 4. So 1 and 4 can go together, and 2 and 2 go together. So let's go ahead and try the 4. Knowing that I have to get to a positive 19, I'm going to definitely use the 4 and put it in the back, so I multiply it by 5, because that's going to give me 20, which is pretty close to 19. So, and I know 19 has got to be positive, so let's put the positive 4 there to get a positive 20. And then I know if that's positive that this one's going to be a negative 1. So checking, you got 5x times x, which is 5x, negative 1 times 4, which is negative 4. Now let's check those middles. Negative 1 times x is negative 1x, and 5x times 4 is 20x. And if you add those together, you're going to get 19x, which is positive, which is exactly what you want for your middle term. So that you know that you factor this correctly. So your final answer is that greatest common factor we pulled out in the beginning, and the two factors that we continued on after we pulled out the greatest common factor. So 3 times x minus 5x minus 1 times x plus 4 would be your final answer. Now we're looking at greatest common factors that have a number in front of the x squared, but could be difference of perfect squares. So if you're looking at C, you got 4x squared and 81. I know that 4x squared can be written as 2x times 2x. That's a perfect square. And same thing with 81, it's 9 times 9. So since these two are both perfect squares, and it's a difference because it's subtraction, it's going to follow that same pattern of 2x minus 9 times 2x plus 9. Now you could have written it with the 2x plus 9 and 2x minus 9 in a different order, but as long as one is positive and one is negative, that's going to be your answer. Now D is a little bit different. We have an x squared, we have the difference, but 18 is not a perfect square, nor is 98. So we go back to the question of, is there a greatest common factor? And there is. There's a factor of 2 in each of these. So if I take out a 2 and I write my leftovers, 2 times what gets me back to 18x squared, and that's going to be 9x squared. 2 times what gets you back to negative 98, and that's negative 49. So now that I have perfect squares, I'm going to look at my leftovers. I have 9x squared, and that can be written as 3x times 3x. And 49 can be written as 7 times 7. So since these are both perfect squares, I can use that same pattern that I used in the problem before, making one negative and one positive. And remembering to bring down that greatest common factor as part of your answer. And that would be it. So that's level 3. Always remember to look for a greatest common factor, write your leftovers, and see if you can factor the leftovers. All right, go ahead and try the practice.